There's been a few changes at Crunchyroll over the past week that have left some anime fans pretty upset, from the loss of 50 anime series that are owned by Sentai Filmworks to the beginning of the end for ad-supported video watching. So why is all this happening? Well, let's run through what's going on and what we know.
Kawaii-Fi!
Konnichiwa, it's Kyle here, and we're back with more changes at Crunchyroll. Yeah, I know. So in case you haven't been following on the news, Crunchyroll has announced in the past week over 50 well-known and loved anime series will be leaving the platform. Now, thankfully, they're all available on HiDive, and the rights for it are owned by Sentai Screenworks. And then there's also the death of what was referred to as ad-supported viewing, being able to watch their series just with adverts. Now, there's a bit more to it than just that, and we'll get stuck into that in a minute. You've probably noticed new location, moved house, do not have a proper setup yet. I'll figure that out sooner or later. More on that in the next video. But let's get stuck in with basically the most important thing, the thing that's going to affect us now, and that's the removal of over 50 series this next week. So over 50 titles are leaving Crunchyroll's library this week on March 31st. Now, they made this announcement on March 25th, and understandably, many people are quite annoyed because they haven't had a chance to watch some of these shows with the time given. Now, these titles include Agami ga Kill, Amagi Brilliant Park, Danmachi, Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in Dungeon, Gate, there's plenty of others, Food Wars, and so on. Now, I've got the full list that's over on our social media, and I'll make sure it's up on screen at the moment so you can see all the ones that we're talking about. But the lay of the land is basically these are all shows that are owned by Sentai Filmworks. Now, Sentai run HiDive, and there's a few questions about how this has happened and why it's happened so abruptly. Now, normally, well, Crunchyroll hasn't historically been quite good at letting people know when something is leaving their platform. And I have seen some people defending it, saying that it's likely just the license has expired, whereas others have said, oh, maybe it could be, you know, something to do with the merger. I guess we should just start off with the simple one. Is it because the license expired? The license expiring being the reason these shows are leaving is unlikely, because some of these shows are only 3 years old. So it mightn't be a licensing issue, but it could be a contractual issue. So there might be a contract agreement where they said, Crunchyroll, you can ask for X many shows a year and we will provide them to your service as part of this agreement. Now, we don't know if that is the current agreement or not, but it seems unlikely for the licenses to have expired because they're, you know, between 7 to 10 years, depending on the industries you're looking at. So in all likelihood, it's not that the licenses have expired, it's that something has changed. The other question people have asked is this because Sony have terminated the agreement early now that they're in charge? Also unlikely. Sony don't have a habit of cancelling agreements. Just look at Spider-Man. They have hung on to Spider-Man for dear life for over 20 years. So if they have an opportunity to hang on to something and not be paying any additional for it, it's unlikely for them to be giving it away. Which brings us to our third option that people are talking about is, did Sentai cancel the agreement and on what grounds? I don't really see them cancelling the agreement if they've got that ongoing agreement and a partnership. If it was a contractual one where they get a set fee every quarter for the amount of shows that Crunchyroll takes on, then I don't see them going, no, we don't want to get that money. That's a guaranteed income, you wouldn't turn it down. Would they cancel the agreement with Sony Crunchyroll? Unlikely, but this brings about the kind of hybrid option, if you will, and what I think is probably the most likely situation. So when Sony, aka Funimation, bought Crunchyroll, Crunchyroll itself was no longer underneath its parent company, which is who the agreements with HiDive were made for. So in all likelihood, what it is the agreement is no longer valid because they're no longer under Otter Media, and that means that the agreement is no longer with them. That'd be like having an agreement with a neighbor and then the neighbor moves out and expects you to honor that agreement at their new house, even though it doesn't really make a difference at your current house. So I think that's more likely the case, and potentially they went to Sony and said, do you want to renew the agreement? And either Sony said, no, we've got all this stuff coming in from Funimation that's going to be on the Crunchyroll service, so we're fine. Or they said, no, we want to keep our stuff just on our server. Or it might be a case that they couldn't come to an agreement on price, or it could even be that Sentai went, you're getting too big, I want to keep my stuff just for me, so we're exclusive for that content. Whatever the case, it's a bugger. it's a shame because a lot of these shows were really good. Love Chunibyo and Other Delusions, but basically anything that's by Kyoto Animation is likely now just on HiDive and not on Funimation or Crunchyroll services. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this segregation of shows as Crunchyroll and Funimation and Wakanim and Anime Lab and all their subsidiaries are unified under that Crunchyroll brand. Basically, it just means that we're going to have two main competing services for simulcast every season, and then you'll also have the odd ones like Netflix and Amazon Prime. The other big change that's coming into place is the end of ad-supported viewing for Crunchyroll. Now, I do need to clarify this. It's not the end of all ad-supported viewing on Crunchyroll. It's the ending of them supporting it for simulcast. So at the moment, when a new season starts, premium members will get to see the episode which comes out on a week-to-week basis at the same time as it airs in Japan or shortly thereafter. And then 1 to 2 weeks later, depending on the agreement, that show will end up, those episodes will be available to view for free as a Crunchyroll free member with adverts to support them. Now, this is a very good model for multiple reasons. Not everyone can afford a membership, and especially with all the events that we've had over the past few years, there are going to be people who haven't got the disposable income to watch stuff. And it's a way for them to get at least revenue off them without having to do, anything extra. Also, my understanding of how you license an anime is that you pay the license to them, and it's not a case of how many views you get on your streaming platform that contribute the amount of money that goes to them, to the supplier of the series. So say for argument's sake, Toei gave Crunchyroll Dragon Ball. They're not going to report back to Toei how many times people watched episode 3 of season 2, for instance, to figure out how much money they're meant to be given. What they do would be agree a flat fee and then give that to them. Now, the reason why this is important is that people who can't afford a subscription at the moment would then be able to view things, albeit a few weeks behind, and it means that Crunchyroll still gains additional revenue from them. Now, by removing that, that means more people are likely to turn to piracy, and that's a shame. But it's only for new shows or continuing series. So if you're watching One Piece going forward, you will have to be subscribed to watch future episodes after next month, pretty much, after the end of April, end of May, I believe it is. And this is a shame because it was a great way to introduce people to shows without having to make them fork up $10 a month just to get them into it. And eventually people will get sick of the adverts and then buy premium because, let's be honest, I've just recently tried doing Crunchyroll ad-supported viewing. It's awful. I had the iPhone that is in green ad 4 times in a row, repeatedly. I tried watching some of Naruto Shippuden on it, and basically every 15-20 minutes or so, you get an advert, and then it will cause the video player to error out back to the beginning, and you'd have to go back to the spot where the ad is, watch the ad again, and hope it doesn't send you back. So from a user perspective, it's an awful experience, and I don't like it, but I understand that it has its place in the industry. Now, this means, at the moment at least, only new anime series are going to have this restriction, meaning all the old ones that are currently free to view are staying the same way. But that's a matter of time, unfortunately. The way this looks to be going, it is the beginning of the end for ad-supported viewing. So there might be some which stay ad-supported viewing for free for a long time, such as Dragon Ball in particular, the original Sailor Moon, and so on. Because they are quite old, the licenses are quite cheap, and therefore it makes sense to just leave them accessible and get even more money off them while you can. That does, of course, mean that going forward, future anime series, so if we get, a new Hunter x Hunter, if we get a new Dragon Ball Super, if we get more One Piece, of course, that's going to stop being free to view. And that sucks. Let's be honest here, that sucks. Now, Crunchyroll have done a lot of good things, with how they've, looked after the community in the past. This reeks of a Sony move. This is 100% a Sony Funimation move, and it's because, hey, we've got a big market share now. We don't have to worry about attracting new people. If they want to watch it, they have to come to us. And as we mentioned on the Kawaii-Fi podcast, That's why monopolies are a bad idea. And I expect to see more of the back catalogue, at least the popular shows, like really well-known shows, anything that was, say, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, and so on, they're going to be locked behind a paywall. And that's simply because they're big shows, their license costs a lot, and therefore the only way for them to perceivably recoup any additional costs from it and make the most money from it is to get people to subscribe. Now, we've seen this happen with like Netflix and plenty of other platforms who did start off with, you know, some free view percentage and then, you know, eventually just cut it and said, no, you got to subscribe. Here's a 14 free day pass, but we will charge you at the beginning of it, and then, you know, you've got to sort of seek a refund. And that's not good for anyone. It pushes more people towards that piracy part, which we were mentioning earlier. And I mean, at the end of the day, there's not really much we can do about it, but speak with your wallet. If people start going, okay, well, if you're removing this sort of stuff from the platform, we don't want to support it, and taking their subscription elsewhere, taking it over to HiDive or whatever else might be local in your area that has some of these series, and especially if you're in continental Europe, there are a lot of different options such as Yamamoto and VRV in Italy, for instance. In France, there's ADV, not ADV, they're gone. They're Sentai. Not ADV, ADN, Anime Digital Network, which is in France. And there are other options available to you as well in the continental US as well. So look, if it's something that does bother you, start pulling away. But to be fair, I think we can say that the ad-supported viewing experience wasn't great. At least 2 ads an episode, and it's normally the same ad on repeat, as it has been especially the past week with the Apple iPhone in green. Yeah, but it is a shame, and it is kind of what we were expecting was going to happen once we heard about the Crunchyroll merger. It does suggest a lot more of a shift towards the Funimation style of running the company, where it's a lot more profit-driven, subscriber numbers-driven, and so on. Now, Crunchyroll, of their own rights, did really well up until this point. Their subscribers were, I think, pretty much ahead or larger than what you saw on Funimation. But with the merger, that's all going in together, and unfortunately, this is kind of what you get when you get someone monopolizing the market, and this is what we're worried about. So if all of this rambling's been helpful to you, make sure you give a like below and hit that subscribe button. We're still a growing channel and we'd love to have you on board for the future stuff. We also have an anime podcast, which you might be interested in checking out. The links to that are in the description below. If you are interested in supporting the channel, we do have a Patreon as well, which is full of additional content such as episode outtakes, the pre-show for each podcast episode, which is what we are talking about before we actually start the episode, along with other little bits of tidbits, including the progress on me building the new studio, which is, it's going slowly. There's no way to beat about it. Building a house at the moment is a terrible idea, so wish me luck on that front. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, watch some anime.